Welcome to those of you joining us right on time this evening. Thank you so much. Evening, morning, depending on where you are, afternoon. We will be getting started in just a couple of minutes. I want to give time for our audience to show up. So we will be getting started in about a minute or two. Thanks for being here, folks. Just so all of you who are rolling into the event today know, we have turned off the um, chat feature. So you will be able to ask questions. Just so you know, we think that's very important. But we will be including a Q&A session, a moderated session first, and then we will be rolling into questions from the audience, and we will be dropping a link in the chat so you can add your questions. And we will be walking through all that in just a minute. All right. Can I get a thumbs up from my speakers if you're ready? All right. Wonderful. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Amanda Miller, and I'm the Associate Director for the National Consortium for Data Science, also known as NCDS. We are part of the Renaissance Computing Institute, or RENC, at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the NCDS Fall Career Panel, Analyzing Data Science Careers. Almost 800 people from around the world registered for this event, which is record-breaking for us. And I would like to thank each and every one of you. That number provides a very solid reminder that on campuses from Arizona to Washington and Texas to Wisconsin, the field of data science is on fire. Students and faculty are hungry to learn more about this field academically, as we see through the proliferation of data science degree programs within higher education. And at NCDS, we strive to connect students with the resources they need to think creatively about the myriad ways to utilize data science platforms, tools, and training within a diverse field of careers. We use data science in journalism, social work, education, public policy, city planning, and more, you name it. And it's our pleasure today to introduce you to the career panel and the panelists with this in mind. You are here now. Be here. Resist the urge to multitask. Your curiosity about the educational and career paths of our panelists will serve you well moving forward. Continue to gather information and gather the data, if you will. Listen to these subject matter experts to discover actionable insights for your own professional journey. So, folks, we do have a few housekeeping items before we get started. As I mentioned earlier, we disabled Zoom Q&A for attendees. All questions related to the panel should be uploaded to Easy Retro, which is our crowdsourcing Q&A platform. My colleague Leah is sharing that link in the Zoom chat now, and you are welcome to add comments and questions. We'll share instructions and the link once again during the moderated Q&A from our audience. we love this platform because we find it fairly easy to use. So, as I mentioned a second ago, go ahead, if you are able to figure that out independently, go ahead and add questions and comments as they arise, upvote questions as they arise by just clicking on exactly. Thank you so much, Leah. By clicking on that plus sign and just adding your question. And then you can upvote by clicking on that little thumbnail. But we will leave a solid chunk of time, hopefully about 20 to 30 minutes at the end of our session together for audience Q&A. When we wrap up this evening, we'll invite you to share feedback on the event. This is really, really important for us because we want to know how to improve and what content interests you most. And finally, we'll provide some announcements about our upcoming programs. So I'm talking a lot here. I know you guys want to get to the panelists, and I am thrilled to introduce you to each of them this evening. You've already read a little bit about their bios, and I am going to just dive in and introduce you to our first panelist. This is Utra Ramanujam. 3 things that she loves about working in data science include connecting the dots, business problems to data to solutions. Number 2, working with people who will actually use insights from the products. And number 3, the reminder to be humble that data does not solve all problems. Aram Klue with Accenture. When we asked him 3 things he loves about his career in data science, he told us he loves how it's relevant to every single industry because of how we depend on insights from data. Number 2, that he didn't seek out a data science career intentionally, but found that developing the skills made him very versatile in the industry. And number 3 wants to note that he was not a data science major and didn't study any of those fields in school. He was a humanities major. Thinks it's important to share that you can teach yourself foundational skills by attending boot camps and learning on your own. And finally, we have Ricky Pimentel with Uplift Labs. 3 things Ricky loves about working in data science: worldwide collaboration, diving into data, and every day there's a different problem to solve. So thanks so much for being here, guys. Everybody unmuted and ready to go?
Yep,
All
thanks
right.
for having us.
Let's see
Awesome.
it.
Awesome. Aram, do you want to get started and share your title and employer information? And then maybe tell us what you wanted to do for a living when you were 10 and what you're doing now.
Sure, I could do that. Hi, everyone. I'm Aram Klue. I work at Accenture full time as a security consulting senior analyst in our data and AI security practice in the Raleigh, North Carolina office. So I'm local. In fact, Amanda and I met in person at the North Carolina Tech Conference. So that I'm really honored to be invited here. When I was 10, I really wanted to be a musician and go to Juilliard. I went to a middle school that was very heavy on the fine arts and learned how to play the trumpet, the tenor saxophone, and I was in an African percussion ensemble. And I happen to be West African, so I just really loved that. And at some point, maybe one day when I retire, I'll start a band where I get to play like traditional like high life guitar and like soukous and samba. Like there are these African genres that are very uplifting.
Love it. Awesome. Thank you. Oh, and tell us about your current role.
Sure. In my current role, I use a lot of data analytics in the healthcare space. So it depends on what client I'm working with, since I work for a management consulting firm. But yeah, I've gotten the opportunity to really upskill in data science this past year.
Awesome. Fantastic. Ricky, tell us your name. Well, I guess we got your name. Tell us your title, a bit about your employer, what you wanted to do for a living when you were 10, and what you do for a living now.
Sure. I'll actually start with what I wanted to do when I was a kid. So I've always been interested in science, and I think the biggest thing I wanted to do when I was about 10 was be a marine biologist. I wanted to go out into the ocean and see the fishes and the corals and learn more about how that works and how we can help keep both our world and the animals around us happy and living free. But I'm still a scientist today. So I currently work for a small startup company called Uplift Labs. And what we do is we do movement analysis for athletes, and we'll hopefully soon be branching out into movement analysis for all different types of people. So we record videos of how people move using a smartphone app, and then provide metrics and analysis of how fast pitchers are moving their torso relative to their pelvis on their pitch delivery, how fast they can swing their bats, how much shoulder range of motion you have to potentially gauge the health of someone going through a baseball season, or potentially, these could be useful for draft picks and potentially give teams more information about who these players are and how they stack up against the MLB players today. So a lot of it's around baseball, but we're branching out into more and more things. And I think you'll see more information about a counter movement jump app that we just released last week, that's kind of geared more towards the consumer fitness space.
Very cool. Thank you so much. And Utra.
Hi everyone, Uttara Ramanujam, and following up Ricky with what he does is a bit of a stretch, so I'm going to try to. But Ricky, I'm super interested in what you just said, because my son and I were working on a machine learning algorithm supporting NFL. So anyway, I'll get to that sometime during the 60 minutes we have. So my job title is a Senior Director of Data Science with Liberty Mutual Insurance. The minute I say that, most people go, this is the Liberty Bibbity ad, like the Limu Emu. Yep, exactly that. But the big difference is I work on what we call the specialty insurance. So walked into specialty insurance without knowing what that meant. And my very first day, my very first meeting, somebody told me, did you know that the Eiffel Tower needs insurance? And I go, yeah, I totally knew that. I did not, but that's the kind of insurance that our organization, our business people actually go out and write. So think these massive airline companies, somebody's insuring Uber, would not have thought of that, right? So that's basically what specialty insurance is. So yes, it's this is my third time doing data science. I've done data science for personal lines, which is what you and I would buy when we buy car insurance. I've done data science at JP Morgan, which is the classic banking and optimization type of data science. So I'm going to say I have done data science for about 8 or 9 years now without a formal degree in data science, because I'm a computer science engineer. And I worked on large scale technology projects for probably the first 15 years of my career. What did I want to do when I was 10? I wanted to be a teacher, because I got a lot of thrill in being the boss and telling people what to do and take notes and stand in front of the class and act important. And believe it or not, I actually am living the dream. I teach part-time in 2 schools, and I do this job. So I really, really love to teach, and I really love data science. So I think I'm lucky to have both of those in my life.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, and here you are again, being fancy and the voice of authority in front of the room. So thank you. We'll actually get started with our moderated session. So we're going to go through questions, and I'm going to ask our panelists to respond to those. And just so all of you know, we will be getting to your crowdsourced questions in probably just about 15 minutes. But let's start by hearing a little bit about your academic journey. A lot of the folks who are on the call today are still in their undergrad studies, possibly pursuing masters, and there are so many programs that are popping up in data science, but so many practitioners, as to your point, Utra, you know, were not data science majors 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So I'd love to hear a little bit about each of your journeys. So tell us what you studied in undergrad or graduate school, and how you made the decision to pursue those degrees, and what that's meant for your career. Big question. Aram, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I'll back up just a little bit before undergrad. So I grew up in Delaware, and the high school I went to had a heavy emphasis on technology. So I went to a vocational polytechnic high school and studied computer engineering and IT and got a few certifications from CompTIA um, going into college. So when I moved to North Carolina in 2015 to attend Duke University, I was able to actually get a part-time job at Duke's Office for Information Technology. So that kind of started my trajectory towards technology, even though I'm still very much interested in the humanities. The bachelor's that I got was in international comparative studies. But since that was at the Trinity College of Arts and Sciences, which is a liberal arts college at Duke, I also had to take quantitative studies courses. And I chose to take data structures and algorithms, which I think was the beginning of like developing those skills for a data science career. An internship that I did the summer of my sophomore year, I went to Ghana, West Africa, and I worked for an information security consulting firm there called Innovare Limited, and attended different security conferences like the ISACA conference, and also got to present to financial institutions on security best practices. So, like,
Quick question, Aaron.
go ahead.
What year were you when you were doing those presentations? And what year were you when you were attending those conferences? Like, were you sophomore, junior?
Sophomore, yeah, this is in
Oh,
2017. Yeah.
wow.
So I just kind of learned on the job, like at the part-time job that I had at Duke, the classes I took, and just things that I was interested in, I would study. Like I continued to pursue certifications while I was at Duke as well. And so that kind of helped me figure out what skills were relevant depending on my career. Um, and recruiting for jobs is also a really great way to kind of practice those skills. I remember my senior year, I actually interviewed with JP Morgan. So I know Utra has some experience there too. But they have a program for people who are humanities majors and want to be software engineers at JP Morgan. And so I'd gone through like 5 rounds with them. I didn't end up getting the job, but I learned so much going through those interviews. You have to use websites like LeetCode to practice coding and other data science skills, so that they see you have the aptitude for it. And in fact, what happened was they actually thought I knew a little bit too much, so I like was taken out of the pool for those of humanities majors and put into the one for those with computer science and engineering degrees, which is probably why I lost out at the end. But it's okay. I chose a different path, and I'm really happy for the adventure.
That's amazing. Utra, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I think I briefly touched on this. My undergrad degree is in computer science and engineering from India. Why did I choose that? Two reasons. I was part of that generation where computer science and programming was introduced as early as 6th grade. So we were one of that first batch of students that started to get that. Was lucky enough to be in a school that actually introduced that. When I started it, I was one of those small handful of people where I would finish my assignment in 10 minutes and literally have to sit tight and not get into trouble for the remaining 50 minutes. So to me, I think I naturally felt that that was something that came to me as second habit. Second reason I did that is because my older brother took computer science engineering and I just had to compete with him on everything. So I'm like, he did it, I'm going to do it too. It turns out to be the best decision. I think I thoroughly enjoyed getting the degree. Now I can joke about it, and maybe I shouldn't tell my boss about this, but one of the subjects I hated in engineering was statistics. And guess what I've been doing for a living? So yeah, I mean, what you're liking and not liking now is not the end of the world. I think your preferences are going to change over time. So how did I end up in data science with an undergraduate degree in computer science engineering? Literally, I would say somebody took a leap of faith on me. So about 9 years ago in JP Morgan, my boss's boss called me and said, literally, not even paraphrasing, hey, everybody's doing data science. I think we should do it too. Can you go figure out what this is? And I go, sure. Who do I talk to? He goes, there's nobody you can talk to. That's why I called you. You're going to figure it out. So what started off as just everybody's doing it, let's go figure out so that we don't feel left behind, was an intense journey of completely teaching myself Python from scratch. I'm going to completely disenchant half the audience. It started with R, and I just thought I was going to pull my hair out in 2 months because I've coded in C and C++ and Java, and then you give me R, I go, this is not programming, people. I need something else. I went to Python and I pulled out half my hair because it's not the same as Java, but you get my point. It completely self-taught because I'd been pushed into the deep end and I wanted to succeed. So I've probably taken 20, 30 different courses and certifications on my own, to the extent that I fell off my chair when somebody called me and said, can you set up this course and curriculum to teach people how to do data mining and then an intro course to Python? I was like, it comes full circle, right? You put in the work, and non-traditional approaches still take you to where you want to be. So yeah, very, very non-traditional, but I think, like you said, I'm quite happy with how it turned out. 10 years ago, would not have thought I'll be doing what I'm doing, but I'm happy.
It's awesome. Ricky, do you want to wrap it up?
Sure. And I'll actually talk a little bit about the fails and challenges. So I went into college undergrad as a physics major and hadn't taken high school calculus or anything like that. So I was learning calculus and trying to do calculus-based physics at the same time. And I was able to get through the first semester, but the second semester with electricity and all that kind of stuff just hit me really hard, and it was not going so well. So I ended up changing majors. And like I had really loved like figuring out how things worked and science and like kind of boiling hard problems down, but wasn't sure which program to get into. And I kind of looked around at my university and saw this thing called health and exercise science, and I was interested in how the body worked and how things change under physical demand. And I switched into that, and it just clicked a lot better for me. And I had a great time like learning more and more, from the basics up, from molecules, biochemistry, all the way up into muscle physiology, cardiopulmonary physiology stuff. But like getting towards the end of my undergrad, I found biomechanics was a field, and this is the analysis of human bodies and how they function, sometimes like machines. I mean, bones, joints, muscles, pull, push, forces, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, this kind of is a step back towards physics a little bit. Let's explore this. And I stuck around that same university and did a master's, and was really fortunate to be able to pursue that longer term. And a lot of the data science skills actually were just necessary to do biomechanics work. We're measuring forces, getting streams of data in all the time. We have to manipulate those and store them in intermediate data forms, and then feed them into our statistical models and all that kind of stuff. So the data science skills and all that kind of stuff was things that you needed to learn in order to finish your thesis or dissertation. And I just really enjoyed building the pipelines and the codes to automate those kind of things. And it's just been fun. I've enjoyed it.
That's fantastic. I love hearing about all of your journeys because I think they're one of the reasons why I wanted the three of you on here is because I know that they are all so very different. But one of the words I keep hearing again and again is skills, 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 right? So I know this is going to be a burning question on a lot of the attendees' minds, but I'd love to hear about, let's say, 3 hard skills that each one of you think that our applicants should be able to include on their resume. They need to be on there in order to be competitive in today's market. Let's talk about the hard skills first, and then in a little bit, I want to get to the soft skills because I think soft skills are definitely also a way you can make yourself stand out in these markets these days. So we can get to that in just a moment, but let's talk about the hard skills first.
Sure, I could start off with that. I'll echo what Utra said about Python. I never learned R besides a statistics class that I had to take for my major in undergrad. So I have an understanding of like statistical research and stuff like that. But I use Python almost every day in scripts that I run. So just having a good grasp at some of the major libraries, like NumPy and Pandas. Yeah, Pandas. I use the Pandas library a lot. That's going to set you apart. So I'd say not just putting Python, but also the relevant libraries to data science career on your resume. So I'll start with that and let other people name some other skills.
I'm going to say, building on Aram, what you said, Python is great. You need to know it, or for that matter, I think there are lots of companies that are a lot more open to R, so nothing against it. It was just hard for me. I'm going to use the word self-sufficient. So keep that in mind. And what I mean by that is, you need to know a little bit of a lot of things to be self-sufficient. You need to know a little bit of, how do I pull data from a database? Like, how does data sit in a database? So I need to know a little bit of that. So what happens to my Python code that models and predicts once I'm done? Like, it goes to the cloud. Like, it doesn't go to the cloud boarding a plane. You know what I mean, right? So I think you need to know a little bit of a lot of things, to the point of, you need to know it not because you need to be an expert at it, but you need to know that, oh, that's right, so and so is going to help me with this. So I would say, be really good at what you do, which is your statistics and data science and machine learning modeling, but be well aware of everything else that needs to go with it.
I'll round out this question with saying that you'll need to be able to talk about a project or an experience or how you applied your knowledge to something, and talk about the skills that the skills that both Utra and Aram mentioned, to be able to tackle the problem, but then all the issues that showed up along the way. We could do all of the coding boot camps online and just be dealing with pristine data the whole time, but that's not what's out there in the real world. So you'll need to be able to talk through how you countered those issues and what you did to correct them. And that is really helpful in the application stage and interview stage, because then you can just tell a story about it and talk about where you started and what you ended up with.
Really good points, you guys. Thank you.
I
So,
think Aram had a point.
oh yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Ricky. Yeah, I wanted to add one more thing. I'm really glad that you said that. Data doesn't really come in clean in real world applications. It has to be transformed, structured, and prepared to be, especially to be ingested if this is ultimately going to end up in a data warehouse. So I work with ETL pipelines a lot. That's extract, transform, load data pipelines. And there are a lot of transformations that I have to do to interpret that data and make it information, which is ultimately meaningful and useful for end users and like the downstream stakeholders. So I'd say really good tools that are very prevalent that help you to do that are Tableau and Power BI. So I use those a lot every day as well. So if you can play around with different projects that have sample data that's unstructured and like practice structuring that, like that is going to look great as a project on your resume.
Such good insight, you guys. Thank you. I'm glad you added that as well. Um, so I want to turn that now into um maybe exploring a little bit about the soft skills or some experiences, that you didn't have in an academic environment or in a career setting, but some of those soft skills that you think are going to help students stand out, or experiences that would make them strong team players, or something that would kind of round out their experience for the folks who are interviewing them. What stories should they be telling? Real stories, not fiction stories.
My favorite is demonstrate curiosity. To me, you can come in knowing two things, but if you have curiosity, you're going to beat your peer in 6 months. You're going to know 200 things. You could know 100 things, but you'll be stagnant and stuck if you don't have it. Curious about everything, like what's happening in the world, like ChatGPT, GPT, prompt engineering, programmatic prompt engineering. Look at the pace at which things are moving, right? The first 3 months of me taking this job, when I got stumped with, did I know the Eiffel Tower needed insurance? I spent 3 months learning everything I could about specialty insurance, right? That is, I think, the key. And for my job, for my position, that was important because my job was to go bring problems back for us to solve, but demonstrate curiosity, be genuinely curious, keep learning, and keep digging and keep digging deep about things that you're seeing that interest you.
Ricky.
I would say resilience is really important. You're gonna come into problems. You're not gonna know how to solve them right away or even a year later. And being able to step away from work for a little bit and come back with a fresh head, or put yourself in different spaces so your mind can be stimulated by different things. This is similar to curiosity, but being able to be flexible and adaptable and gel and not knowing the answer right away, but being able to sit on it and wait on it and gather more information. Hopefully you have enough time to be able to do that. That is a luxury sometimes. But being able to flip the script and think about things a different ways is very important.
All right, Aaron.
Yeah, I was thinking on like what's one good word for soft skills. There are a lot of soft skills that are very helpful. I like that you said storytelling, but I'd say you have to be able to relate to the person you're telling the story to, like understand what their why is, and make it feel like as you're like giving a solution or detailing the very technical work that you're doing with the data, that their desire or like the overall goal is like at the center of it. So like oftentimes in data science consulting, I have a lot of PowerPoint presentations and like we'll be on calls just like this, sharing slides or talking and trying to explain our approach. And so you'll find that the clients or the people that you're helping are going to be happier, and ultimately you'll be able to produce buy-in if you really hone in on that practice of telling the story that's relevant to them and to the stakeholders.
Fantastic. Thank you. So another question I want to explore is kind of targeting our folks who might be pursuing liberal arts degrees right now. Utra and Aram, maybe you guys want to get us started on this, but any advice on how to combine interests in their liberal arts fields with data science? And for some spaces, I think that's a little more obvious than others, but if you want to just kind of get started in that topic, that'd be great.
Sure. I personally don't have a liberal arts degree, but there are a few people on my team who certainly have that, or definitely have a minor in it. What I think I've noticed, the special skills that they bring to problem solving is they look at, it could be the exact same distribution of data, but they're able to pull out insights, which I think the usual analytical mind misses. Or even if they don't have the exact representation, they're able to generate questions, which I think is a little bit more in tune with like, hey, this particular metric took a downward trend. Is there something that changed in how you run the business? I think those aspects of being able to connect what's actually happening on the front line with what the data is telling, or just being able to articulate that question or the story, I think is huge. There's definitely a big place for people with that major or minor, because the biggest struggle we have with any data science team is being able to understand business problems, actually identify the right business problems to solve, because just because there's a problem, you don't go solve it with data science. Like you really have to have somebody who's able to think about it 360. And most importantly, my solution, how is it really going to make somebody's life better? So there is a lot of those aspects of problem solving, which definitely you've got to bring that frame of mind. For people like me who've never had formal schooling, that's definitely a steep hill I have to climb to really learn how to do that.
Yeah, I would say one of the best experiences I had when I was still an undergrad at Duke was the opportunity to do research, especially with graduate level students, doctoral students, while I was still an undergrad. So I had the privilege of being able to travel to an area outside of Rio de Janeiro called the Baixada Fluminense. So I had to get into an intensive Portuguese class, but since I was an international comparative studies major, I actually like had experience in Romance languages. So I also speak French and Spanish. But the particular insight that I would say is useful related to data science is that we had to learn like the IRB protocol of like how to do humanities research. And so that might involve statistics. It might involve understanding how to form a hypothesis and like how you're going to test against the p-value and like reject the null hypothesis, like all these statistical concepts. But that's important when you're trying to research something that relates to human subjects. So what we were trying to study in this lower income area of Brazil was what is the effect that higher education has on raising those in poverty, raising their social mobility over time. So that's something that can be studied quantitatively, but it has to be interpreted qualitatively. And so we also conducted interviews directly with people and like heard their life stories, made a documentary out of it. And so those are skills that like can give so much more context to the data, especially if you're in a data science career that is very dependent on trends that are being interpreted by data over time.
That's fantastic. Ricky, I actually want you to answer a different question, if you don't mind. We're going to head to the students' questions and the attendees' questions in just a moment. But Ricky, I would love for you to finish this moderated section by telling us a little bit about how you selected your graduate program and how you determined the criteria. And you know what, folks, it might be as simple as one program was more generous than the other, and I think that's a reality that folks need to know about as well. But walk us through that decision-making process for you.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things to weigh, not only like which level, so master's, PhD, but also like what do they offer you along the way? Are there teaching assistantships? Are there research or service assistantships to help pay your way through school? Because it's a big decision. But I think you're going to be doing research in, even if you are being paid to be a TA or research assistant, it's not a lot of money. You're going to have to love what you're studying. So find the area that you're really passionate about and you're open to spending 2 to 8 years on answering questions and diving deeper into the field. And then after that, once you decide if you want to do a master's or PhD, definitely on the master's level, if there's any way that you can teach classes or support the department along the way or support programs that the department supports, I've heard of a lot of different ways to help pay your way through school. So definitely look out for those. But then if you're doing the PhD side, don't consider just the department, but consider the professor that you're going to be working with. And if there's any way for you to identify who's getting grants federally or regionally, usually that's when PhD positions open, is when a professor gets a grant and now they have to complete a whole research project in 2 to 5 years, and they're going to need to pay a student to help along with that. So look out for that kind of stuff. Sometimes with specific societies, you can see who's looking for PhD students, who just got a grant, all that kind of stuff. And if you're doing a PhD, I'd say that the advisor that you're going to be working with every day is more important than the department necessarily. The department is there to support you, of course, it's obviously it's going to matter a little bit, but you're not going to be working with the department chair every day. It's going to be your main advisor. So that's who you should be looking for first.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So with that, we are going to transition to the Easy Retro board. That is our crowdsourcing tool, our platform, so we can hear the questions that you're interested in answering. So as you guys can see here, we have individual columns for specific panelists, but we also have a general question column. And so I'm going to start with the questions that have the most upvotes, and that is going to be my method for moving through these questions, folks. So if there is a question that you like that you see up here, upvote it, and that will increase the chances of us getting to that. We have about 20 minutes, about 15 minutes to complete this section. Yeah, let's get started. So let's see, it looks like the general question, how is the job market shaping after the introduction of generative AI? And what should we do to keep up with the changes? That looks like our most popular question. Who wants to tackle that first?
I don't mind getting into it a little bit. So if you follow the news and or like tech trends, Accenture CEO, who's Julie Sweet, she's based out of our DC office. She announced like all of the news that we're investing like $2 billion in generative AI upskilling for our employees. So what that's looked like are some really cool courses that have been put on Pluralsight that we take at Accenture to be able to understand what AI is, generative AI. And I've also been taking some courses at Duke again, part-time through their graduate liberal studies program that's designed around working professional schedule. But yeah, I would say that generative AI is rapidly changing the tech landscape, and a lot of companies that leverage technology are using Gen AI solutions to kind of I guess like optimize their work stream and like how they work day to day. And so it's important to understand what AI can do, but I also want to elevate that you need to understand what AI is and what it isn't. You know, like some people will think that just because they have a generative AI tool, that any answer it gives is relevant, or if you put in code that like the code is going to be perfect, even if it seems to work. But the parameters can be flipped. It might not have understood something, and that's because generative AI is not like like a conscious being. It's just a whole bunch of statistical inferences that depend on the data model that it's been able to iterate over. So like it's almost like not calling it AI for a second and focusing on what it actually specifically is doing in your use case. That'll really set you apart and make you seem a little bit more learned about it. Like, so it's not just like the big hype. Yes, it can be very useful, but I think you have to be very clear on what your use case is and how it's going to help in that scenario.
Super helpful. Utra.
I'm going to echo a lot of what you said. And I think the last time I was on this panel, I made this comment about when you put projects on your resume and you're all graduating out of school, graduate school, undergrad degree, and you're going to put a lot of projects in there saying, hey, I did this and I did that, right? With Gen AI becoming almost like a staple now, I think the game standards have been increased. So what I mean by that is really put some thought into how you've used Gen AI. Like you can use Gen AI to go ask what a simple question is, which would have been a Google search 3 years ago, right? That is not what people are looking for. Like, what were some unique applications where you actually use Gen AI? So that's number one. It is here to stay. It's not a fad. I think we've all accepted that. What I would really suggest is if there's one thing you do walking away from here is go look for prominent voices on LinkedIn, look for these prominent researchers who are not shy to publish articles on LinkedIn. That is my go-to. It's my one platform where I get everything I need. Just follow 5, 6 of them and read up everything they publish. You have to keep up. That's the key. It is here to stay. You have to keep up. You have to keep applying it. Just reading it doesn't get you that break, right? Apply it, be creative as you apply it, and don't be shy to talk about it.
So good. Ricky, anything to add?
Oh, I think you two covered most of it. Just definitely be aware when it breaks, because it's not always going to be perfect. We don't use a ton of generative AI, but we use a lot of normal AI and machine learning at Uplift. And the vast majority of when things fail is perhaps we weren't clear enough with our instructions on how to record these videos and what can or cannot be in the background, that kind of stuff. So it seems like magic. It definitely seems like magic compared to what we had 10 years ago, but there's still lots of ways it can break, and you need to be really careful with those.
Super helpful. All right. Utra, I'm going to come back to you and ask this question. What qualities and qualifications compel you to hire or refer certain individuals?
How they solved a problem.
Hmm.
It could be a problem you had, and I'll give you a very colorful example. My almost 15-year-old, he's my second son. So he came to me last year and he said, I want to work on this thing where I want to do something with data and predict who is going to be a successful NFL coach. Right. And I go, that's fabulous. The point of me giving you that colorful example is you have to start there. Like, what are you trying to do? And we spent probably the next 2 weeks just kind of like picking that story apart, all with the intent of me trying to teach him that that's literally how everything starts, right? So what do I look for people? Can people explain to me why they picked the problem, or why was it a problem? It doesn't have to be something where you cured cancer, but all I'm trying to understand is, did you give it deep enough thought to know that you picked the right problem? There was you solving the problem was actually going to result in something big. So that's definitely something I look for. I typically tend to tune out when people just rattle off a bunch of 7 different algorithms they've tried, or 7 different neural networks they've tried. I'm like, that is not important to me. That's a Google search away. But what is it that you really did? I really look for team players. What is it that you can do by yourself, and what is it that you can do with others? Because, unless you're a one-man, one-woman startup, you're part of a team, so you have to get along.
Super. Let's see. I'm going to bounce over to Ricky to the first question in the column. This person is going to complete their PhD in mathematics this semester, not in data science. When I apply for jobs, I realize they do not want to hire for internship or maybe entry-level jobs since I have a PhD. But at the same time, it is also not enough for higher positions since my PhD is in a different topic or category. What advice can you give about this? And I'm asking you to read between the lines a little bit here.
Yeah, it's really challenging, and I face this as well. I graduated last May, so May of 2023, and I spent the rest of 2023 looking for jobs, applying for jobs, anything and everything related to a PhD in biomedical engineering and or human movement analysis and data science, and dozens and dozens and dozens of applications and some interviews. And I was still really struggling to find something. And so I had to open up the filters, find more things to apply for. And I actually ended up getting a temporary position with the state of Colorado in their behavioral health and data analytics group. And so I spent actually 6 months working with them, learning more about behavioral health in the state of Colorado and how we support providers and ensure that, you know, these programs are getting enough funding and resources from the state government. And so that was kind of nice to be in a different space for a while, but I was still a little bit bummed that I wasn't using my area. And then 6 months into that, I saw a few more other jobs come up. And luckily I had a few extra skills to be able to put on my resume. Um, and so was able to get those applications out, and luckily one of them finally hit. So I would say be resilient, be open to other and different styles of positions. And if you can at least get yourself in front of someone and be able to talk through about why you're interested in that position, how your experience in mathematics or whatever your specialty degree is, how that applies to what they're trying to do, and just be able to talk about it. I mean, the hard thing is getting in front of them, but be sure that if you do get the chance to have a face-to-face interview or a virtual interview, that you can talk about why, you know, why your skills would be great for that position and what you can do.
I think that's really helpful. And now we're going to address the first question in the general questions column, which is a toughie. So we are all well aware that, especially in these large corporations, a lot of times it is AI that is screening resumes. We have a lot of attendees on this Zoom tonight who have less than 2 years of experience and are concerned about being rejected, even though they have the required skills. So, Utra, you work for a very large corporation. I would love, and actually, Aram, you do as well. If you two wouldn't mind responding to this, Utra, if you want to get us started.
AI or not, your resume has to stand out. I probably read hundreds of resumes a year between internships and internships for others that I read resumes on. And I will literally glaze over. And I made this exact comment the last time I was on this panel. If I see yet another project that did sentiment analysis on IMDb, you've lost me, right? So my point of, again, giving you colorful examples is you really, really, really have to work on it. You may have only 2 projects, but you're going to have to say it like you're talking to me on the phone or talking to me on video, right? Really, really start there, right? Don't put every CNN, neural net, this GPT, that GPT, GPT-4. That's going to get weeded out. Be real, be human, put those things that you're not going to find in your neighbor's resume. So really put some thought to that. I think that's the way to go. Are big companies using AI to screen resumes? I would say the word AI is pushing it, but there's definitely probably an initial level of filter that says, if I'm looking for a minimum of 2 years of experience, is there 2 years of experience, right? There's definitely some of that going on. And definitely don't use ChatGPT to write your resume. That's going to get trapped quite easily.
Yeah, I'd love to speak to that. I've done a lot of referrals for people who want to work at Accenture, and honestly, sometimes I read their resume and it's phenomenal. And to the point, yes, there's software that scans the resume for certain things, and sometimes you just have to see what the keywords are in the job description, and just reword your resume. Obviously, don't fabricate anything like that's not ethical, but be able to speak to your experience and tailor it to the job if it does relate. And the number one advantage that you have over AI is that you're a human and it is not a human. So use that to your advantage and connect with the humans that are on the other side that can get you the job. Both of the postgraduate full-time positions that I've gotten because I talked to people at the company and they were able to take my resume and put it in front of a human and also vouch for me that you should give this guy a shot at the interview. And then when you're at the interview, that no matter how you got there, that's when you really have to sell your experiences, the projects you've worked on, what sets you apart from other candidates, why you're a good fit. And it goes back to that soft skill, being able to truly talk about a story in a way that's relevant to who you're speaking to. If you're speaking to a database administrator in one of the technical interviews, speak to experiences that would make sense to a database administrator, like the challenges they might face day to day. Be able to put yourself in the shoes of the role that you're trying to apply for, and demonstrate that in the interviews, and that's how you're going to get a job. But I will say it has been incredibly challenging. Sometimes it's hard to even get in front of a person, and that's when you have to go out on a limb sometimes, and even do cold emails, cold calls, LinkedIn messages. Um, but yeah, those have been the best opportunities that I've gotten so far.
You know what? That's a great segue into this first question for Utra that's at the top of the column. What are some tips for cold emailing outreach? That is a very different question than the second question on there. Let's focus on the tips for cold emailing outreach.
That is a tough one. As I think I've alluded to throughout the evening, I've been in the workforce for a long time. And I think with some of that mindset, cold emailing is one thing I dread to this date. To do it, I mean. That being said, where have I seen a cold email where I actually paid attention and did something with it? This person truly actually had something in common with either something I liked or something I'm working on or something that I spoke to go, hey, you said this thing in that conference, and I'm not making this up. Somebody who was on this panel a year ago, 6 months later, reached out to me and said, you said these things and I actually applied it and it was a huge success. Like, I'm not kidding, gave me goosebumps. Be that personal. If your outreach is not driven by that much of a personal connection, it's going to be tough because LinkedIn has definitely changed as a platform over the years, and it's very easy to cold call or cold reach out to anybody. How do you stand out is you have to be ultra personal. You have to like hit that nerve where I go, that's interesting. I need to see what this person told me. Part two of that question was about location. That's a bit of a interesting question. As you probably are all in tune with the news, lots of things are changing with respect to location and hybrid and working from the office. I'm not going to touch on that because it's a individual company thing. What goes on my mind when I'm hiring somebody who's entering into the workforce for the very first time, I would ideally prefer to put that person, even if it's for a short 6-month stint, with people on the team on a location. That first 6 months in your first corporate job is so important that you have to be able to do that. That is me not trying to say don't apply for a remote job, but if you're not in person with the rest of your team, even if it's for a short time, it's on you to really work hard to cover the gap. So be willing that that's a risk. That's an added work that you have to do to cover that gap.
All right, and I think we've got time for one more question. And so I'm going to actually ask that you guys answer this. Ricky, Utra, and Aram, one networking strategy that has been effective for you. And I'm going to kick that off actually and answer that by saying I have definitely leaned hard into cold LinkedIn outreach. And that has been effective only when I am able to personalize the message in the exact way that Utra just mentioned. You have to make it meaningful for the person you're reaching out to, but don't underestimate power. In fact, a young woman who was a waitress at at a restaurant I went to the other night just reached out to me on LinkedIn. I don't remember telling her my first or last name. I told her where I worked, and I'm thrilled for her. I mean, it's great, I'm that's being proactive. But anyway, I would love to hear from all of you on that. Most effective networking in data science.
I'll just say one word since we're short on time, persistence. I think one of the best quotes I've heard is that other people can have more skills or innate talent than you, but if you're the only one that's still working at it, you're the one that's gonna make it. So yeah, don't give up.
Super.
I would say briefly, like, go to those in-person events, be ready to chat anyone up and do your research beforehand.
I'll close it out with reiterating what Aram said, but maybe in a different way, is drip. One word, drip. It doesn't have to be one evening of just going out there and impressing up the wazoo, right? If there's somebody I like, I send them a happy new year. And then a couple of times in a year, it's like, hey, I just thought of you because I worked on this project. I drip. Small bites, small bits. People know it's like, oh, she wasn't one of those random cold callers. She stays in touch.
Otra, you're the best. All three of you, really. I can't thank you enough. This has been such a fun panel to moderate. You guys have given incredible advice. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving your time. Folks who are still sticking around right now, I do hope you take note. It is incredible that these accomplished folks are still willing to give back to the data science community. Believe it or not, participating in this panel does not come with a huge check. They do it out of the kindness of their hearts and their interest in growing and building the data science community. So a massive thank you to you guys for serving on this panel this evening. And a big round of applause to our attendees who have shown up tonight and taken that first step. Continue learning, continue upskilling. Those are some big themes we've heard tonight. I am looking forward to reading your evaluations as we shut down this Zoom and learn a little bit more about the ways that you want to, the programs you want to see NCDS deliver in the future. Do take a minute to check out Ricky's Uplift app that we just dropped a link to in the chat. And I do want to encourage all of you to register for our next Data Bites event, Navigating the Data Divide, Approaching Analytics Across Organizational Maturity Levels. That will be next week at noon on Thursday, I believe. Thanks so much, everyone, for being here. Have a great evening. Have a great afternoon. Take care and stay in touch. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the questions, everyone. Those were great.